Nomad. "The blue girl is mine!" roared Arius and moved toward the girl in the blue dress. No one objected. A few attacking comrades glanced in her direction without much interest, not stopping their fight. Besides, he didn't expect anyone to have a problem with it. He mostly did that for effect. He spotted her as soon as she scrambled out from under the overturned wagon and began looking around in panic. There was something in her movements, in those nervous glances she cast around, in the cloud of disheveled, almost black hair dancing around her head, something that immediately caught his attention. One of the caravan guards blocked his path and swung a sword. Arius didn't parry. He dodged to the side while simultaneously delivering a quick thrust to the enemy's back, where the armor ended. The man groaned and collapsed to the ground. He probably survived, but Arius didn't want to waste time finishing him off. He was in a hurry. Just a few more leaps between wagons and he stood right in front of her. Now he could get a better look. She saw him too, turned sharply toward him, raising a small dagger. Her wide-open eyes gleamed with fear. Her full lips parted slightly in loud, panicked breathing. He could even see how her tiny nostrils trembled, surrounded by a barely visible yet noticeable cloud of freckles. The whole was crowned by a neat, slightly pointed chin. And that blue dress, an unearthly sight, he thought. He nearly paid for it with his life. Only thanks to instinct, or rather the hours of training under Petrarca's watchful eye, who always had a surprise up his sleeve and used to say, "Expect the unexpected," did he manage to avoid the blow. Fortunately, the opponent wasn't very skilled in swordsmanship, so when Arius dodged, the man stumbled and exposed his neck. Arius reacted reflexively. He struck and cut off his head. He slowly turned his gaze back to the girl. She wasn't looking at him, but at the slain man. Her eyes grew even wider, and her face expressed utter terror. Finally, she looked at him. He knew that expression. Desperation. She's going to attack, he thought. Indeed, the girl lunged at him with the dagger raised, but it was immediately clear she had no fighting experience. He sidestepped again, and she stumbled. She would have fallen if he hadn't caught her around the waist just in time. For a moment, he caught a glimpse of her exposed neck and shoulders, white and delicate. What a lovely little neck, crossed his mind. The girl didn't share his romantic attitude. She began to struggle and wriggle. Her dagger got caught in her dress and slipped from her hand. Arius had been watching the dagger the whole time, instinctively, just in case. In combat, he tried never to leave anything to chance. Well, at least the dagger's out of the picture, he thought. The girl jumped back. He didn't hold her. She had nowhere to run anyway. She stood there staring at him, breathing even louder, and he could swear her eyes were even wider now. And that desperate expression people get when they realize there's no way out anymore, no hope left. He knew his appearance inspired fear. He always prepared for battle carefully, taking care to impress his opponents. Another lesson from Petrarca: win the fight before the fight. The sounds of fighting were dying down. It would all be over soon. He noticed her face was becoming paler, almost bluish. She swayed slightly and began to collapse. He caught her at the last moment, but she no longer felt it. Mariana woke up in the wagon. For a moment, she didn't understand what was happening. Then came a sobering clarity, and her memory returned. Their caravan had been ambushed. She shuddered at the memory of the terrible nomad who had attacked her, and at the sight of the severed head of a soldier from the escort. It wasn't that she had never seen severed heads before. These were rather turbulent times, and such things did happen. What shook her more was the ease with which that monster had done it, as if without effort, almost casually, not paying much attention to it. She looked around. Fortunately, he wasn't anywhere nearby. She was riding in a wagon with several other people. Their hands were tied to the side of the wagon, although not very tightly, as she noticed. She started to struggle. "Better not do that," she heard the voice of a woman sitting next to her. "While you were unconscious, one of them tried to escape. They caught him immediately. Now they're dragging him behind one of the wagons. Nobody even knows if he's still alive." Mariana was devastated. She was just about to marry a rather wealthy merchant and councilman from the nearby town of Arcona. Admittedly, she had never seen him before, but she had been traveling under the escort of his men to meet him for the first time. The marriage had been arranged by her father, who thought it was a great match. Oh gods, what will become of me now? Life as a slave among the nomads, or sold off, who knows where and to whom? Maybe her future husband or her parents would manage to ransom her. Hopefully. Let's hope. They traveled all night and most of the following day. They didn't stop even once, though they were given some water and food. The terrifying nomad was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he didn't survive, she thought hopefully. Late in the afternoon, they finally reached the campsite. The wagons came to a halt, and the nomads began unloading the captives and sorting through the loot. Then she saw him again. He clearly hadn't been riding with the caravan. He was approaching from an entirely different direction. Her skin prickled. A dreadful moment was drawing near, not rushing but advancing with slow, deliberate steps. When he came closer, all her nightmares returned. A face painted black and eyes flashing with whites. The lower part of the face was covered with the jawbone of some predatory animal, with grotesquely protruding fangs. On his head, a helmet made from a skull with horns curled downward and huge, empty eye sockets. The skin still attached to the helmet draped over his back and shoulders. She was completely paralyzed. She barely noticed when he cut off her bonds, took her by the arm, fortunately quite gently, and pulled her off the wagon. Then, without a word, he started walking ahead. Mariana, as if in a trance, followed him. They reached a sizable tent. He must have been someone important in their settlement because the tent looked quite luxurious. They went inside. The nomad, that's what she had started calling him in her mind, approached her. Her hands were still tied. He grabbed the ropes and calmly hung her from a hook inside the tent. The hook was clearly meant for that purpose. She started trembling like jelly, sensing that something terrible was about to begin. She saw an older woman enter the tent. She looked at Mariana and shook her head. Was that good or bad, she wondered. Meanwhile, the nomad slowly circled her. He came closer and took an interest in her dress, the one her mother had bought her for the visit to her fiancé. The dress had lots of bows and knots, some real, others just decorative. The nomad began untying them slowly, as if he were playing. Somehow, he knew exactly which ones were real. With every knot he undid, her terror grew. The dress was made so it could be taken off by untying the sleeves, and he removed it from her without even taking her off the hook. She was left wearing only a white undergarment shift. He ran his hand along her side. She trembled, but he did nothing more. For now, she thought. She was still shaking like jelly. He came even closer, looking her straight in the eyes. She was like hypnotized, his piercing gaze drilled into hers. The old woman poured something into a large vessel standing by the tent wall and said a few words. Mariana didn't understand. Because she couldn't take her eyes off his face, she could have sworn that at the woman's words, he rolled his eyes. That human gesture disoriented her a bit, but she figured she must have imagined it. He was still wearing his helmet, and she couldn't see very clearly. The nomad walked off toward the water vessel. She felt a huge wave of relief. At least there would be peace for a little while longer. In the place where the tub of water stood, it was rather dark, but she saw that he began to take off parts of his armor, first the helmet, then the rest. He bent over the water and began to wash himself, submerging his face entirely, then scrubbing his shoulders, chest, and hair. When he finished, he stood up and moved toward her. Now, in better light, she could really take a good look at him. Without armor, in short trousers reaching to his knees, he looked completely different. The transformation was incredible. In front of her stood a young man with an impressive figure and a distinct, calm, pensive face. The light falling from the side through the door emphasized his admittedly impressive, muscular body. He had no beard, only a few days' stubble, which was strange because all nomads wore beards. His dark blonde hair, not very long, just enough to cover his neck, combed back, now wet, spread into a kind of chaotic halo. Only the piercing eyes remained the same. Mariana looked with wide eyes, but this time more with disbelief, and even a bit of admiration than with fear. The nomad walked around her again, which triggered another wave of panic. As before, he stopped face to face with her, though this time the impression was completely different. And then he said, "You must be a witch." She shivered at the sound of his voice. He spoke the way he moved, calmly, firmly, without a hint of haste or anger, but in a way that sent chills down one's spine. Only after a moment did Mariana understand what he had said. A witch? Me? She thought in disbelief. She knew well what people did to witches, and she had a feeling that the nomads were no better. Shaken by the accusation, she let out an involuntary gasp. What? Your magic is very strong. I cannot take my eyes off you. The nomad continued in his strange, almost solemn tone. Mariana swallowed hard. Fear tightened its grip on her throat, but she forced herself to answer. I am not a witch. I am just an ordinary girl. Then what is your name, witch? He went on with a slight ironic smile, ignoring her denials. Mariana, daughter of Cornavosotsa, she replied almost automatically, as if the very formula might save her. I am not a witch, she repeated. The nomad raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh, you won't fool me. If you aren't a witch, then how do you explain your beauty? My beauty? She asked, confused. You are incredibly beautiful, Mariana, he said, looking straight into her eyes. She looked at him as if he were out of his mind. Maybe he was under the influence of some herbs he used before battle? His words sounded stranger and stranger, but at the same time, he didn't look so threatening anymore. She started uncertainly. I'm not that beautiful, she said cautiously. She still didn't know where this conversation was going. Oh yes, you are, he continued with conviction. I am enchanted by your beauty, and that can only be explained by one thing. You cast a spell on me. I didn't cast a spell on anyone, she cried out, increasingly shaken. I am not a witch. I was on my way to Arkona to meet my future husband. He is an important man. He will surely send someone to find me. My parents will pay a ransom too, a big ransom, she blurted out desperately, grabbing at every possible hope. A husband? The nomad took interest, tilting his head slightly. And who might that lucky man be? He added with a trace of sarcasm in his voice. Despite the horror of the situation, his calm, even elegant way of speaking was strangely soothing. Mariana gained a bit of courage. Arimin of Vels, a councilman of Arkona, very wealthy. He will surely pay you a lot of gold for me. The nomad fell into thought. Arimin of Vels. Mariana, do you realize that this councillor of yours is twice your age, fat, almost bald and a drunk, and that he already has 2 wives? Are you sure you want to become the wife of such a creature? He paused, then added with a slightly predatory gleam in his eye. Or maybe you're planning to cast a spell on him? He fell silent for a moment, then added even more quietly. Besides, do you know what they do with witches in Arkona? Mariana looked at him, surprised. For the first time she heard a note of emotion in his voice, as if he were jealous, but that made no sense. What can I do so you'll let me go? She asked desperately. Honestly, I don't see a reasonable solution. Nomads don't just let witches go. Usually they burn them at the stake, he said coldly. Mariana went cold, then hot. Do they really want to burn me at the stake? She thought. She looked at him, searching his face for some clue, but his gaze remained unmoved. But I'm really not a witch. Every witch says that.